welcome back to the Snoozing Scientist. Before we begin tonight's journey, I'd love for you to leave a comment down below telling me where you're tuning in from. There's something quietly fascinating about knowing that, all around the world, in different homes, different cities, and different time zones, people are listening to the same gentle story at the end of their day. So wherever you are tonight, I'm really glad you're here. Tonight, we're going to spend some time with something very familiar, something you've likely seen countless times, often without giving it much thought. Birds. They move through the same world we do, but in a completely different way. They cross distances we rarely notice, navigate landscapes from above, and live entire lives just slightly out of reach, often overhead, often unnoticed, and yet always present. And when you begin to look a little closer, what seems simple at first becomes surprisingly complex. Because birds are not just animals that fly. They are highly specialized, finely tuned organisms shaped by millions of years of adaptation, built for efficiency, precision, and movement in a way that is very different from anything on the ground. Even something as basic as flight is far more intricate than it appears. When a bird lifts into the air, it is not just flapping its wings randomly. The shape of the wing, the angle at which it meets the air, and the subtle adjustments made with each movement all work together to create lift. Air moves faster over the curved top of the wing and slower beneath it, creating a pressure difference that allows the bird to rise. But beyond that, birds are constantly adjusting their wings in real time, responding to changes in wind, speed, and direction with small, nearly invisible corrections. Some birds, like hawks and eagles, can glide for long periods without flapping at all. They take advantage of rising columns of warm air called thermals, allowing them to circle upward with minimal effort. From there, they can travel long distances, conserving energy while remaining in motion. It's a system that relies not just on strength, but on understanding the invisible patterns in the air around them. Other birds, like hummingbirds, operate in a completely different way. Instead of gliding, they hover, beating their wings incredibly fast, sometimes dozens of times per second. Their wings move in a figure-8 pattern, allowing them to generate lift on both the upward and downward stroke. This gives them the ability to remain suspended in place, move backward, and change direction instantly, something very few other birds can do. Inside their bodies, there are equally interesting adaptations supporting all of this movement. Bird bones, for example, are not solid in the way human bones are. Many of them are hollow, containing air spaces that reduce weight without sacrificing strength. This makes flight more efficient, allowing birds to lift themselves into the air with less effort. Their respiratory system is also uniquely designed. Unlike humans, who breathe in and out using the same pathways, birds have a system of air sacs that allows for a more continuous flow of air through their lungs. This means that oxygen exchange can happen both when they inhale and when they exhale, making their breathing more efficient, something that becomes especially important during sustained flight. Birds also have a much higher metabolic rate than most animals, meaning they use energy quickly and must replenish it often. This is why many birds spend a large portion of their time feeding. Even small birds, which might appear delicate or slow, are actually operating at a very fast internal pace, constantly converting food into the energy needed to maintain body heat, movement, and flight. Migration is another aspect of bird life that becomes more remarkable the more you think about it. Some species travel thousands of miles each year, moving between breeding and feeding grounds across continents. and they do this with a level of accuracy that seems almost impossible. Many birds navigate using a combination of environmental cues. They can detect the position of the sun during the day, the stars at night, and even the Earth's magnetic field. Specialized cells in their bodies allow them to sense magnetic direction, giving them a kind of internal compass. This means that even when landmarks are not visible, they can still maintain a consistent course. What's even more interesting is that young birds, in some species, are able to migrate for the first time without guidance from older birds. They follow instinctive patterns encoded in their behavior, adjusting along the way as they gain experience. Birds also communicate in ways that are more complex than they might seem. Birdsong is not just random noise, it often carries specific meaning. Some calls are used to mark territory, others to attract mates, and others to warn of danger. In some species, birds can even learn new songs and modify them over time, creating variations that are passed through populations almost like a form of culture. Their vision is another area where birds differ significantly from humans. Many birds can see a wider range of colors, including ultraviolet light, which is invisible to us. This allows them to detect patterns on feathers, plants, or even trails left behind by other animals that we would never notice. For a bird, the world may appear far more detailed and layered than it does to us. Even their feathers, something that might seem simple, are highly specialized structures. Feathers provide insulation, waterproofing, and the ability to fly, all at once. They are arranged in patterns that reduce drag, improve lift, and protect the bird from environmental conditions. And unlike fur or skin, feathers must be maintained carefully. Birds spend a significant amount of time preening, aligning, and cleaning their feathers to keep them functioning properly. Some birds sleep in ways that seem unusual as well. Certain species are capable of resting one half of their brain at a time, allowing them to remain partially aware of their surroundings even while sleeping. This is especially useful in environments where constant awareness is necessary for survival. If you begin to notice birds more closely, you might also see how they interact with their environment in subtle ways. Small adjustments in posture, slight changes in direction, brief pauses before movement, these are all part of how they respond to the world around them. Nothing is entirely random. Each action is connected to a system of perception and response that is constantly active. And even though they move quickly, often passing overhead in just a few seconds, their lives are built from these continuous, small processes. Navigation, communication, feeding, flight, all happening in a steady flow that rarely draws attention, but is always present. As you continue to follow them a little more closely, another detail begins to stand out, and that is how precisely birds manage energy over long periods of time. For many species, survival depends on balancing energy intake with energy use in a way that leaves very little room for waste. A small bird, for example, may need to eat a large percentage of its body weight each day just to maintain its metabolism. And yet, despite this constant demand, birds are able to store and use energy in highly efficient ways, especially when preparing for migration. Before long-distance journeys, some birds enter a state where they dramatically increase their food intake, building up fat reserves that act as a concentrated energy source. During flight, especially over oceans or vast stretches of land, these reserves are gradually used to fuel continuous movement, sometimes for hours or even days at a time. What's interesting is that their bodies are able to switch fuel sources efficiently, prioritizing fat over other forms of energy because it provides more energy per unit of weight. While this is happening, their muscles are working in a very specialized way. Flight muscles, particularly those in the chest, are among the most developed in a bird's body. These muscles are structured for endurance rather than short bursts of strength, allowing for repeated contractions without rapid fatigue. The coordination between muscle activity, oxygen delivery, and energy use is tightly regulated, making sustained flight possible. Another detail that often goes unnoticed is how birds manage landing, something that appears simple but involves careful control. As a bird approaches a surface, it must reduce speed without losing stability. This is done by adjusting the angle of the wings and tail, increasing drag and slowing forward motion. At the same time, the legs extend at just the right moment, absorbing the impact and allowing for a controlled stop. All of this happens within a very short time frame, guided by visual input and rapid adjustments. Birds also have a unique way of maintaining balance while perched. When a bird lands on a branch, tendons in its legs automatically tighten, causing the toes to grip without requiring continuous muscle effort. This means a bird can remain perched, even while sleeping, without falling. It's a passive mechanism, relying on the structure of the leg rather than active control. Their feathers, beyond aiding in flight, also play a role in temperature regulation. Birds maintain a relatively high body temperature compared to many other animals, and feathers help retain heat by trapping air close to the body. When a bird fluffs up its feathers, it increases this insulating layer, reducing heat loss. In warmer conditions, feathers can be held closer to the body, allowing heat to dissipate more easily. There is also something interesting in how birds manage water balance. Unlike mammals, many birds do not sweat. Instead, they regulate temperature and hydration through behaviors like panting, seeking shade, or adjusting activity levels. Some species can also excrete excess salt through specialized glands, allowing them to drink seawater without disrupting internal balance. Bird eggs are another area where subtle complexity appears. The shell of an egg is not completely solid, it is porous, allowing gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide to pass through. This enables the developing embryo to breathe while still being protected. At the same time, the shell must be strong enough to withstand external pressure, creating a balance between permeability and strength. As the embryo develops, it uses nutrients stored within the egg, gradually forming structures needed for survival outside the shell. Timing is critical, as development must reach a certain point before hatching occurs. In many species, chicks hatch with specialized structures that allow them to break through the shell, after which those structures are no longer needed. Birds also show interesting variations in how they care for their young. Some species invest heavily in raising a small number of offspring, providing food and protection until they are capable of surviving on their own. Others produce larger numbers of eggs with less direct care, relying on probability rather than protection. These different strategies reflect adaptations to specific environments and survival pressures. Another layer of complexity appears in how birds perceive motion. Many birds have a higher flicker fusion rate than humans, meaning they can detect changes in light more rapidly. This allows them to see fast movements more clearly, which is especially useful during flight or when detecting predators. What might appear as a blur to a human can be seen in much finer detail by a bird. Their hearing, while often less emphasized than vision, is also well adapted to their needs. Some species can locate sounds with high precision, even in low light conditions. This ability supports communication and awareness of the environment, complementing their visual system. There is also a continuous process of feather replacement known as molting. Over time, feathers become worn and less effective, so they are gradually shed and replaced with new ones. This process is carefully timed, often occurring in stages so that birds can maintain the ability to fly while renewing their plumage. Another interesting detail is how birds interact with air currents in ways that are not immediately visible. Small adjustments in wing position allow them to respond to turbulence, maintain lift, and conserve energy. These adjustments happen continuously, guided by sensory input that detects changes in airflow. Birds also display a wide range of social behaviors, from solitary living to highly coordinated group movement. In flocks, birds can move in synchronized patterns, adjusting their position based on the movement of those around them. This coordination allows the group to change direction quickly and maintain spacing without collisions. As all of these processes come together, what begins to emerge is a picture of birds not as simple creatures moving through the sky, but as highly adapted systems, constantly adjusting, responding, and maintaining balance in ways that are easy to overlook. And even as they move quickly, appearing and disappearing within moments, their lives are built from these continuous interactions, each small adjustment contributing to a larger pattern that remains mostly unseen, but always in motion. There's also something quietly remarkable in how birds manage navigation over familiar territory. Many species are able to remember specific locations, feeding spots, nesting areas, and migration routes with surprising accuracy. This memory is not just general, but spatially detailed. Some birds, like crows and certain songbirds, can remember hundreds of individual hiding places where they've stored food, returning to them later even after long periods of time. This ability relies on a well-developed region of the brain associated with spatial memory, allowing them to build a mental map of their environment. That sense of place becomes even more impressive when you consider how birds adjust to changes. If a familiar route becomes blocked or conditions shift, they are able to adapt, finding alternate paths while still maintaining a sense of direction. It's not a rigid system, but a flexible one, shaped by both instinct and experience. There is also a subtle complexity in how birds manage their vision during flight. While moving at speed, they must process large amounts of visual information quickly: distances, obstacles, movement, and changes in light. Their brains are adapted to handle this efficiently, allowing them to react almost instantly to what they see. Some birds even stabilize their head while their body moves, keeping their gaze steady so that their visual field remains clear. Feeding behavior reveals another layer of specialization. Different species have evolved beaks suited to very specific types of food. A finch's short, strong beak is designed for cracking seeds, while a hummingbird's long, narrow beak allows it to reach nectar deep within flowers. These differences are not random, they reflect long-term adaptation to particular environments and food sources. Even small variations in beak shape can influence how effectively a bird can feed. There are also birds that use tools, something that might not be expected at first. Certain species, like crows, have been observed using sticks to extract insects from crevices or dropping hard-shelled food onto surfaces to break it open. This behavior shows a level of problem-solving that goes beyond simple instinct, involving learning and adaptation based on experience. Flight patterns themselves can vary widely depending on the species and the situation. Some birds fly in steady, direct paths, while others use a more irregular pattern, alternating between flapping and gliding. These differences often relate to energy efficiency and environmental conditions. In some cases, birds flying in groups form patterns that reduce air resistance, allowing individuals to conserve energy by taking advantage of the airflow created by others. There is also a quiet coordination in how birds manage their internal rhythms throughout the day. Activity levels rise and fall based on light, temperature, and the availability of food. Many birds are most active during early morning and late afternoon, when conditions are favorable for feeding and movement. These patterns are not random, but aligned with both environmental cues and internal biological clocks. Some species also exhibit behaviors that help regulate their condition beyond basic survival. For example, birds will sometimes engage in dust bathing, spreading fine particles through their feathers. This helps remove excess oils and parasites, maintaining feather function and overall health. Others may sunbathe, positioning themselves to absorb warmth and potentially reduce the presence of microorganisms. There is also something interesting in how birds respond to seasonal changes. As temperatures shift and daylight hours change, their behavior adjusts accordingly. Migration, breeding, and feeding patterns all align with these changes, creating cycles that repeat year after year. These cycles are guided by both external signals, like daylight length, and internal mechanisms that track time. Even the way birds take off reflects careful coordination. To become airborne, they must generate enough lift to overcome gravity while maintaining balance. This often involves a quick push from the legs combined with immediate wing movement, creating a smooth transition from ground to air. The timing of these actions is precise, ensuring stability from the very first moment of flight. There is also a continuous interaction between birds and their surroundings that shapes how they move and behave. Wind patterns, temperature gradients, and the structure of the landscape all influence their actions. Birds are constantly responding to these factors, adjusting their movement in ways that are subtle but consistent. Some birds are also capable of remarkable endurance. Species that migrate over long distances can maintain flight for extended periods, managing energy use, navigation, and environmental conditions simultaneously. These journeys are not direct in the sense of a straight line, but they are guided by a combination of instinct and adjustment, allowing birds to reach distant locations with consistency. Another detail appears in how birds communicate visually in addition to sound. Movements, postures, and even feather positioning can signal intent or state. A slight change in stance or wing position can convey information to other birds, forming a layer of communication that operates alongside vocal signals. As all of these elements come together, what becomes clearer is how much of a bird's life is built on continuous adjustment. Small changes in position, movement, perception, and response are happening constantly, forming a system that is both stable and flexible at the same time. And even as they move quickly through the sky or settle quietly on a branch, those underlying processes remain active, shaping every action in ways that are easy to overlook, but always present. Some birds also have a way of experiencing the world that includes details humans never notice at all. Because many species can see ultraviolet light, patterns that are completely invisible to us become clear to them. Feathers that look plain may actually contain bright markings used for communication or mate selection. Even certain flowers reflect ultraviolet patterns that guide birds like hummingbirds directly to nectar sources, almost like a natural signal embedded in the environment. Their sense of direction can go even deeper than sight and memory. Research suggests that some birds are able to perceive the Earth's magnetic field visually, as if direction itself is layered faintly over what they see. Specialized cells in their eyes may react to magnetic fields, giving them a constant awareness of orientation. This means that even when the sky is overcast or landmarks are unclear, they can still maintain a steady sense of direction. There is also a quiet efficiency in how birds manage their weight. Every part of their body is influenced by the need to remain light enough for flight. Organs are compact, bones are structured for strength without excess mass, and even digestion is relatively fast to avoid carrying unnecessary weight. Food is processed efficiently, and waste is removed quickly, all contributing to maintaining the balance required for movement through the air. Some birds take advantage of environmental features in ways that are easy to overlook. Along coastlines or cliffs, certain species ride air currents that are deflected upward by the terrain, allowing them to remain aloft with minimal effort. Over open water, others follow wind patterns that shift predictably throughout the day. These interactions with the environment are not random, they are learned and refined over time, allowing birds to move with a kind of quiet efficiency. There is also something interesting in how birds rest while remaining alert. Even when perched or seemingly still, their awareness of the environment does not disappear entirely. Small movements of the head, slight changes in posture, and brief pauses in activity all reflect a continuous monitoring of what's happening around them. This balance between rest and awareness allows them to recover energy without becoming completely unaware of potential threats. In colder environments, birds have developed ways to conserve heat that go beyond feathers alone. Some species tuck one leg up into their body to reduce heat loss, while others adjust blood flow to their extremities, minimizing the amount of warmth lost through exposed areas. These adjustments happen automatically, guided by internal signals that maintain body temperature within a narrow range. There is also a subtle coordination in how birds take in and process sound. Their ears are positioned in a way that allows them to detect slight differences in timing and intensity, helping them locate the source of a sound with accuracy. This is especially useful in dense environments like forests, where visibility is limited and sound becomes an important source of information. Feather structure itself is more complex than it might seem at a glance. Each feather is made up of a central shaft with branching structures that interlock, forming a surface that is both lightweight and strong. If these structures become separated, birds can realign them through preening, restoring the feather's shape and function. This ability to maintain their own aerodynamic surfaces is essential for consistent flight. There are also birds that adjust their behavior based on subtle environmental changes that humans might not even notice. A slight shift in temperature, a change in air pressure, or a difference in light intensity can influence when they move, feed, or rest. These responses are part of a continuous interaction with the environment, allowing birds to remain aligned with changing conditions. Some species exhibit remarkable problem-solving abilities, adapting their behavior when faced with new situations. This can include finding alternative food sources, modifying nesting strategies, or adjusting movement patterns. These changes are not immediate, but they show that birds are capable of learning and refining their actions over time. There is also an ongoing process of coordination between physical movement and perception. When a bird changes direction mid-flight, it must adjust wing position, body orientation, and visual focus all at once. These adjustments happen so quickly that they appear effortless, but they rely on continuous feedback and precise timing. In flocks, this coordination becomes even more noticeable. Each bird responds to the movement of those around it, maintaining spacing and alignment without direct communication. The result is a shifting pattern that moves as a whole, changing direction smoothly and quickly. This behavior emerges from simple rules followed by each individual, rather than a central leader directing the group. There is also a quiet balance in how birds interact with their surroundings when they are not in motion. Perching, resting, and even small movements involve constant adjustments to maintain stability and readiness. These actions may seem minimal, but they are part of a larger system that keeps the bird prepared for sudden changes. As all of these details come together, the picture becomes clearer. Birds are not simply moving through the environment, they are continuously responding to it, adjusting in small ways that allow them to maintain balance, efficiency, and awareness. And even in moments that seem still or uneventful, those processes remain active, shaping every movement, every decision, and every quiet interaction with the world around them. There is also something subtle in how birds manage their voices, especially when you begin to look at how sound is actually produced. Unlike humans, who use vocal cords in the larynx, birds use an organ called the syrinx, located deeper in the chest where the trachea splits into the lungs. This position allows for an unusual level of control. Some birds can produce two different sounds at the same time, effectively creating layered notes or harmonies within a single call. It's part of what gives birdsong its complexity, even when it sounds simple on the surface. That same control extends to how birds learn sound. In certain species, songs are not entirely instinctive but are learned over time. Young birds listen to adults, practice imperfect versions, and gradually refine their calls until they match the pattern. This learning process is surprisingly similar to how humans acquire language, involving repetition, feedback, and memory. There is also a fascinating detail in how birds manage their heads and necks during movement. Some birds, like pigeons, appear to move their heads forward in a jerking motion when they walk. This isn't random. The head actually remains stable for brief moments while the body moves forward, then quickly resets. This pattern helps stabilize their vision, allowing them to see clearly even while in motion. In flight, a similar stabilization happens, but in a much more fluid way. Birds continuously adjust the position of their head to maintain a steady visual field, even as their wings and body shift around them. This allows them to track objects, navigate obstacles, and maintain orientation without losing clarity. Another interesting aspect is how birds manage their feathers during flight. Feathers are not rigid, they can separate and adjust slightly, allowing air to pass through in controlled ways. At the tips of wings, some feathers spread apart, reducing turbulence and improving efficiency. These small changes in feather position happen automatically, shaped by airflow and subtle muscle control. There is also a process of seasonal change in plumage, where some birds develop different feather patterns or colors at different times of the year. These changes often relate to mating or camouflage, allowing birds to adapt visually to different conditions. What might appear as a simple color change is actually the result of a carefully timed cycle of feather growth and replacement. Birds also show interesting behavior in how they manage risk and awareness. When feeding, many species position themselves so they can quickly detect movement in their surroundings. Even while focused on finding food, they maintain a level of alertness that allows for rapid response if needed. This balance between focus and awareness is maintained continuously, rather than switching fully from one state to another. There is also a detail in how birds interact with water, even beyond drinking. Some species bathe regularly, using water to clean their feathers and maintain their condition. Others, especially in drier environments, use dust or fine particles instead. These behaviors help control parasites and keep feathers functioning properly. Another layer of complexity appears in how birds manage their daily timing with light. As daylight changes throughout the year, birds adjust their behavior accordingly. Longer days can trigger breeding behavior, while shorter days may signal preparation for migration. These responses are guided by internal systems that measure light exposure over time, rather than reacting only to immediate conditions. Birds also have a way of managing their energy use during rest that is different from what you might expect. Some species can lower their body temperature slightly during periods of inactivity, reducing the amount of energy needed to maintain warmth. This controlled reduction allows them to conserve resources without entering a full state of dormancy. There is also a fascinating detail in how birds handle flight in different environments. In dense forests, birds often have shorter, more rounded wings that allow for quick turns and precise movement. In open areas, species tend to have longer wings suited for gliding and sustained flight. These differences reflect how flight is adapted to specific surroundings, balancing speed, maneuverability, and efficiency. Birds also display a form of social awareness that can influence behavior. In flocks, individuals adjust their position not just based on movement, but also on spacing and alignment. This creates patterns that shift smoothly as the group moves, with each bird responding to those nearest to it rather than to the entire flock at once. There is also a continuous process of environmental scanning happening even when birds appear calm. Small head movements, brief pauses, and changes in posture all reflect an ongoing assessment of surroundings. This scanning is not intense or constant in a noticeable way, but it remains present in the background of their behavior. Another interesting detail is how birds manage their landing approach depending on the surface. Landing on water, for example, requires a different adjustment than landing on a branch or the ground. Wings are positioned to reduce speed, legs extend at the correct moment, and the body angle shifts to match the surface. Each type of landing involves a slightly different sequence, refined through repeated experience. There is also a subtle coordination in how birds maintain their feathers in alignment during flight. Small muscles at the base of feathers allow for slight adjustments, ensuring that airflow remains smooth and efficient. Even minor misalignment can affect performance, which is why birds spend time maintaining their plumage. As all of these details continue to build, it becomes clearer that birds are constantly adjusting in small, precise ways, responding to both internal needs and external conditions. Every movement, every sound, every shift in position is part of a larger system that remains active and coordinated, even in moments that seem simple at first glance. There is something especially interesting in how birds decide when to sing, because it isn't random or constant. Most birds sing at very specific times of day, especially in the early morning, during what is often called the dawn chorus. At that time, the air is usually calmer, which allows sound to travel farther and more clearly. Light levels are still low, making foraging less efficient, so instead of searching for food, many birds use that time to communicate. What sounds like a peaceful background of birdsong is actually a layered exchange of signals, marking territory, attracting mates, and establishing presence. The structure of those songs can be more complex than it seems. Some species have a small, fixed set of calls, while others build longer, more varied sequences. Certain birds can even mimic sounds from their environment, incorporating them into their songs. This isn't just imitation, it's part of how they adapt and compete. A more varied or precise song can signal fitness to potential mates, making sound not just communication, but a form of display. There is also a fascinating detail in how birds think about space and problem solving. Species like crows, ravens, and parrots have shown the ability to plan ahead in ways that resemble basic forms of reasoning. In experiments, some birds can choose tools based on future use, rather than immediate reward. They are able to understand cause and effect, remembering not just where something is, but how it can be used. This suggests that their thinking is not purely reactive, but involves some level of prediction. Memory plays a large role in this. Birds that store food, for example, must remember not only the location of each hiding place, but also the timing. Some food items spoil more quickly than others, so birds will return to certain locations sooner, while leaving others for later. This requires tracking multiple variables at once: location, time, and type of food, without any external system to support it. There is also a subtle way in which birds evaluate risk. When approaching a food source, they often pause, scan their surroundings, and adjust their behavior based on what they detect. This pause is not hesitation in a simple sense, it's part of a continuous assessment process, weighing safety against opportunity. Even in familiar environments, this assessment continues, reflecting a constant balance between efficiency and caution. Birds also show interesting patterns in how they recognize each other. In some species, individuals can identify specific members of their group by sound alone. This allows them to distinguish between familiar and unfamiliar calls, responding differently depending on who is signaling. It adds another layer to communication, where calls are not just signals, but identifiers. There is also something notable in how birds handle learning over time. Young birds often go through a period where their songs are incomplete or inconsistent, sometimes referred to as subsong. Over time, through repetition and feedback, these sounds become more structured and stable. This gradual refinement shows that learning in birds is not instantaneous, but develops through practice, much like other forms of skill acquisition. Another detail appears in how birds process visual information when moving at speed. Their brains are adapted to handle rapid changes in the environment, allowing them to navigate through complex spaces like forests without collision. This involves not just detecting obstacles, but predicting movement and adjusting trajectory continuously. Birds also demonstrate a kind of selective attention. In environments filled with sound, such as a forest with many calling individuals, they are able to focus on specific signals while filtering out others. This allows them to respond to relevant calls without being overwhelmed by background noise. There is also an interesting interaction between instinct and learning. Some behaviors are present from the beginning, such as basic movement patterns or simple calls, while others develop through experience. This combination allows birds to function effectively early in life while still adapting to their specific environment over time. Another layer of complexity appears in how birds coordinate group movement without direct communication. In flocks, each bird responds to the position and movement of a few nearby individuals rather than the entire group. This local interaction creates large-scale patterns that appear coordinated, even though there is no central control. Birds also have a way of adjusting their behavior based on environmental feedback. If a food source becomes less reliable, they may explore new areas. If conditions change, they alter movement patterns or timing. These adjustments are not dramatic, but they accumulate over time, allowing birds to remain aligned with their environment. There is also a quiet consistency in how birds return to routines. Many species follow similar patterns each day, moving between resting, feeding, and social interaction in predictable ways. These routines are flexible enough to adapt when needed, but stable enough to provide efficiency. Even something as simple as perching involves ongoing control. A bird must maintain balance, adjust grip, and respond to slight movements in the branch or surface. These adjustments happen continuously, even when the bird appears completely still. And through all of this, song, movement, memory, and perception, what begins to stand out is how birds are not simply reacting to the world around them. They are continuously interpreting it, adjusting to it, and moving through it with a level of awareness that is quiet, constant, and easy to overlook unless you take the time to notice it. There is also something fascinating in how birds handle their perception of time, especially during long journeys. Migratory species don't just follow direction, they follow timing with remarkable precision. Many birds begin migration based on changes in daylight length rather than temperature or immediate conditions. Their bodies are able to measure how long the day lasts, and when that threshold shifts, it triggers hormonal changes that prepare them for travel. This means a bird can begin a journey before conditions visibly change, relying on internal timing rather than external signals alone. That internal timing also affects how birds prepare for these movements. Some species will become noticeably more restless just before migration, a behavior known as zoogunru, where they move more frequently and show signs of directional preference even while still in place. It's as if their bodies are already aligned with the journey before it begins. There is also an interesting detail in how birds perceive distance and scale from the air. When flying, they are not just moving through space, they are constantly interpreting the landscape below. Patterns of light, color, and shape provide cues about terrain, water sources, and safe landing areas. Their ability to recognize these patterns allows them to navigate large areas without needing a fixed path. Another layer of complexity appears in how birds manage their attention between multiple tasks. While flying, a bird must maintain lift, monitor its surroundings, adjust direction, and remain aware of other birds or potential threats. These processes happen at the same time, not in sequence, requiring a level of parallel processing that allows for continuous adjustment without interruption. Birds also show an interesting ability to anticipate movement, especially when flying in groups. Instead of reacting only to what has already happened, they often adjust based on the motion they expect from nearby birds. This predictive behavior helps maintain smooth group movement, preventing collisions and allowing for coordinated changes in direction. There is also something notable in how birds handle unexpected changes in their environment. If wind conditions shift suddenly, or if an obstacle appears, they are able to adjust mid-flight almost instantly. These adjustments rely on rapid feedback from their senses, combined with pre-learned patterns of movement that allow for quick correction. Another detail appears in how birds manage their vocal communication in noisy environments. In areas with many competing sounds, some birds will adjust the pitch or timing of their calls to stand out. This means their communication is not fixed, but adaptable, changing based on what they need to be heard. Birds also demonstrate a kind of spatial awareness that extends beyond immediate surroundings. Some species are able to remember not just locations, but relationships between locations, allowing them to move efficiently between multiple points. This kind of mapping goes beyond simple memory, involving an understanding of how different places connect. There is also a continuous process of refining movement efficiency over time. Young birds often appear less controlled in flight, making more frequent adjustments and using more energy. As they gain experience, their movements become smoother and more efficient, reflecting a gradual improvement in coordination and control. Another interesting aspect is how birds manage their body orientation during complex maneuvers. When turning sharply or changing altitude, they adjust not just their wings, but their entire body alignment. These adjustments are small and continuous, allowing for precise control even during rapid movement. Birds also have a way of balancing exploration and routine. While they often follow familiar patterns, they also explore new areas when needed. This balance allows them to find new resources while still relying on known locations, maintaining both stability and adaptability. There is also something subtle in how birds respond to changes in light beyond simple brightness. The angle, color, and duration of light all provide information that influences behavior. These variations can signal time of day, season, or even weather changes, allowing birds to adjust accordingly. Another layer appears in how birds manage their internal energy signals. Instead of waiting until energy is depleted, their bodies begin adjusting behavior in advance, prompting feeding or rest before reaching a critical point. This anticipatory regulation helps maintain stability over time. Birds also show interesting patterns in how they interact with moving air. Rather than resisting wind, many species adjust to it, using it to their advantage. Tailwinds can extend range, while headwinds may lead to altered routes or rest periods. These adjustments reflect a continuous interaction with environmental forces rather than a fixed path. There is also a process of micro-adjustment in wing motion that happens with every beat. Even during steady flight, each wing movement is slightly different, responding to immediate conditions. This prevents instability and allows for smoother motion overall. Another interesting detail is how birds handle information overload in complex environments. In areas with many stimuli, sounds, movements, and visual signals, they are able to filter and prioritize, focusing on what is most relevant at the moment. This selective attention allows them to function effectively without being overwhelmed. Birds also maintain a kind of ongoing environmental awareness, even during routine activities. Feeding, resting, and moving all occur alongside continuous monitoring of surroundings. This awareness is not intense or constant in a noticeable way, but it remains present, ready to respond if needed. And as all of these details continue to layer together, what becomes clearer is how birds are constantly balancing multiple demands: movement, perception, communication, and energy use, all at once. Their behavior is not a series of separate actions, but a continuous flow of adjustments, each one connected to the next, shaping how they move through the world in ways that feel simple from the outside, but are built from a quiet and constant complexity underneath. There's also something intriguing in how birds experience rest without fully disconnecting from their environment. In some species, especially those that spend long periods in open areas or near water, one half of the brain can enter a sleep-like state while the other remains active. One eye may stay open, quietly scanning for movement, while the other side rests. This allows them to recover while still maintaining awareness, creating a balance between rest and alertness that feels almost continuous rather than clearly divided. That same balance appears in how birds choose where to settle. When selecting a perch or nesting location, they're not just looking for a place to stop. They're evaluating safety, visibility, stability, and proximity to resources all at once. A branch that seems ordinary may offer the right angle to detect movement below, enough flexibility to absorb wind, and just enough cover to remain unnoticed. These decisions are made quickly, but they reflect layers of environmental awareness. There is also a quiet precision in how birds land on moving surfaces. When approaching something like a swaying branch, they don't simply aim for where it is, they adjust for where it will be. This requires predicting motion in real time, combining visual input with timing so that the landing remains stable even as the surface shifts beneath them. Another interesting detail shows up in how birds handle changes in altitude during flight. Climbing higher requires more energy, but it also provides access to different air currents and wider visibility. Descending, on the other hand, can conserve energy while increasing speed. Birds constantly make small decisions about altitude, balancing effort and efficiency depending on where they are and what they need. There's also something subtle in how birds manage their field of view. Many species have eyes positioned on the sides of their head, giving them a wide panoramic view of their surroundings. This allows them to detect movement from multiple directions at once, even if it means sacrificing some depth perception directly in front. Other birds, particularly predators, have more forward-facing eyes, trading a wider field for greater depth accuracy. These differences shape how each species interacts with the world. In quieter moments, birds often engage in small, repetitive movements, adjusting feathers, shifting weight, turning their heads. These actions may seem insignificant, but they reflect continuous maintenance. Feathers need to stay aligned, balance needs to be preserved, and awareness of the environment never fully fades. Even stillness contains motion, just on a smaller scale. There is also a fascinating aspect in how birds interpret shadows and light. Movement doesn't always need to be seen directly. A sudden shift in shadow, a change in brightness, or a flicker across the ground can signal the presence of something above or nearby. This indirect perception adds another layer to how they detect changes in their environment. Another layer appears in how birds manage group spacing in flocks. Each bird maintains a certain distance from its neighbors, adjusting continuously to avoid collisions while staying close enough to benefit from the group. This spacing isn't fixed, it shifts dynamically, expanding and contracting as the flock moves. Birds also demonstrate a kind of environmental memory that includes timing. Not only do they remember where resources are located, but they also remember when those resources are most available. A feeding spot that is productive in the morning may be less useful later in the day, and their behavior adjusts accordingly. There is also a continuous process of evaluating sound patterns. Birdsong isn't just listened to, it's analyzed. Subtle differences in rhythm, pitch, or repetition can indicate the identity, condition, or intent of another bird. This means that listening is not passive, but an active process of interpretation. Another interesting detail is how birds manage their body orientation relative to the sun. Light direction can influence visibility, temperature, and even how easily they can detect movement. Small adjustments in position can change how much light they absorb or reflect, affecting both comfort and awareness. Birds also have a way of handling unexpected silence. In environments where sound is usually constant, a sudden absence of noise can signal danger. This shift can trigger a pause in movement, as birds reassess their surroundings before continuing. There is also something notable in how birds respond to repetition in their environment. Familiar patterns allow for faster decision-making, while unfamiliar ones trigger more cautious behavior. This distinction helps them move efficiently while still remaining adaptable. Another layer appears in how birds manage their interaction with gravity during flight. Every movement must account for the constant pull downward, balancing lift and forward motion to remain stable. Small changes in wing angle or speed can shift this balance, allowing for climbing, gliding, or descending as needed. Birds also show an ability to pause movement without losing readiness. Even when completely still, they remain prepared to react, with muscles and senses aligned for quick response. This readiness is not tense or constant in a noticeable way, but it remains present beneath the surface. And as all of these details continue to unfold, what becomes more apparent is how birds are never fully inactive. Even in moments that seem calm or uneventful, there is a continuous flow of adjustment, perception, and response happening quietly in the background. Each small movement, each pause, each shift in direction is part of a larger pattern that keeps them connected to their environment, moving through it with a steady awareness that is always present, even when it appears still. And as the day begins to fade somewhere beyond the trees, the movement of the bird starts to soften in a way that's almost unnoticeable at first. The sky, which once carried quick shapes and shifting patterns, becomes quieter. Wings beat less often. Calls become more spaced out, less urgent, as if the need to announce, to respond, to travel, is slowly giving way to something calmer. A single bird settles onto a branch, then another, each choosing a place with the same quiet precision they've used all day. There's no sudden stop, no clear moment where everything ends, just a gradual easing, as if the rhythm of the day is gently lowering itself without ever fully disappearing. The air still moves, though it feels softer now. Leaves shift slightly, branches sway just enough to remind you that nothing is completely still. And within that movement, the birds remain part of it, adjusting without effort, holding their place in a world that continues whether they act or not. Somewhere in the distance, a final call carries through the fading light. It isn't loud or urgent, just present, like a small echo of everything that came before it. For a moment, it lingers, and then it's gone, absorbed back into the quiet. And what's left is not silence exactly, but something close to it. A kind of stillness that isn't empty, but full in a quieter way. The same world is still there, the same sky, the same trees, the same steady patterns, but now it feels settled, as if everything has found its place again. The birds remain, tucked into branches, hidden in the shapes of leaves and shadow, no longer moving through the sky, but still part of it. And even without seeing them, you know they're there, resting in the same world they crossed so freely just moments before. Nothing has stopped. Not really. The air still moves. The earth still turns. And somewhere, far beyond what you can see, other wings are still in motion, still following paths you may never notice. But here, in this moment, everything feels slower. Quieter. As if the world itself has taken a breath and decided, for now, to hold it. And with that quiet settling in, there's nothing left to follow, nothing left to trace. Just the sense that everything is continuing exactly as it should, whether you're watching or not. And that's enough to let the rest of your thoughts drift. And gradually fade with it.